Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be showing you how to create your context for your app. So I'll be demonstrating how to create a simple context API. So I'm gonna start off by creating a folder, which I'm gonna call context, and then within this folder I'm gonna create new files. First one is app context.tx, and the other one will be app context. So we're gonna start off with what is context API. So context API on its own, it's a global state management in your React applications. So it is basically an in-memory storage, which means it exists within your app's runtime and environment, and it just hold state as the app is running. So you find that if you refresh, probably you will lose that data that you would have saved. So it is a way of simply providing data through components, uh, through the component tree, without having to pass props or properties manually at every level within your tree. So React comes with a method that we can call to create the context. So what you want to try and do is identify the type of data that you're going to be storing, and then you create the context with the types of the data that you're going to be storing. So in this example, I'm going to be creating maybe just a bookstore to store books. So the first thing that I'm going to do is come to the app context file and just import React, right? And then you can create the context here. I'm gonna call it context, and then I'm gonna say React dot. I think React has a method called create context, right? And this method takes in an object with all the values that you are going to be storing, or the state of all the values that you're going to be storing. But this function right here, it supports generic types. So by default, it doesn't have any of that, but you could pass your own types here. Sorry for that. So you could pass your own types here, just so that it's easier for you when you store your data here to point out, say let's say for this bookstore, your book will be, you have books in here, right? By default you're gonna start off as an empty string, sorry, as an empty array. So in here you could create the type of the books, to say books will be of type, let's say book, an array which contains a book type. That is what I mean by this. So now we can create our book type here. So it could be an interface, which I'm gonna call book, right? And then this will have a title which will be of type string. It will also have a description which is of type string, and pages which is of type string. No, this could be number, and then the author should be string. So this is our uh, interface, or you could create it as a type, but I'll just put it as an interface here. So this is what you do, and then you want to export this as the default, right? So we now have like a simple context for our app. So the next thing is we want to create a provider. So we're going to come to your app context provider here, and then you're going to import React, right? And we'll create let's just call it context provider. This is of type React, functional component right here. Takes in some props as well. For now, I'll just return nothing for now. So what you want to do is pass in the props. I like to pass in an object with children of type any. Then we have props here, and then over here you want to import that context from app/context, right? And then here you want to create that app context. Say context dot, so it has these properties. We have consumer, display name, but what we want to do is we want the provider to create the provider, right? Like so. And the provider takes in the value, which is an object with all the values that you're going to be storing. So here, this is a central point where you kind of make changes to your data, so that whenever you make a change, you update the context, right? So all the changes or all the functions that are going to be manipulating your data should be defined here, so that whenever you make a change, you update the context within the context provider here. So the first thing that we're going to do is create probably some state to hold the books, right? Here set books. This is what we're going to have, which is use state, right? Initially I'm going to say this is an empty string, but I do have this interface here. I want to use it over there so that it kind of persists, so that we don't have different types. So this state should be something that holds books. So this is going to be imported from app context, and then I'm going to say this books type or this books variable is going to hold an array, which is of an array that contains the book interface here. So initially it's going to be an empty array. That's what it's going to be. Then in here within the values, we're going to pass in the books as our first value, like so. So you could maybe create another logic to add a book. So you could start off here within your type here, where you are defining your generics type. You can say add book. It's gonna be a function which takes in a title, which is a string, and it also takes in the description, which is a string. It also takes in pages and number, and lastly the author, which is a string. Right, so this function doesn't return anything, so we're just gonna say it's going to return void since it's not returning anything. And in here we could just instantiate it, maybe to just hold any type of function. Here it's just going to hold a function with nothing, its function body, like so. So we're gonna come back here and then create. I'll just use the same name, add book. This is a function which takes in title as well. Is string description, is string, and it's gonna also take in the pages, which is the number, and lastly the author, which is a string. Alright, this is an arrow function. Like so. So here within these values, we're just mapping to say whatever value that we have here within our state, within our context provider, we're going to map it to the books value that we have within our context here, right? So with JavaScript, right, if the value in property names are the same, we just provide the property name here. I could have done it some other way, but let's use it this way. So we could have, so now you could pass in add book, sorry, here, because the property name add book here is the same as the value name here. So it's the same. So when adding a new book here, so I'm gonna add a new property which I'm gonna say ID, which should be a string, so that we kind of have something. So in here, I'm gonna create a new book, which I'm gonna say const new book, which is of type book is equal to an object. So first of all, I'm gonna create that ID value. Then I'm gonna say let's just say new date, right? It's gonna be of type new date dot get, can we just say time dot to string, just put it to string so that we use this as an ID, the date, the time probably when the book is created. So over here we kind of say ID is, we have the value of the ID right here. Since property name and value are the same, we just provide the property name. So the same with the other variables, the title, just provide the title, description, pages, and the author. So now we have, sorry for that. So now we have our new book. What we can then do is just set this new book to the books that we have over there. So I'm gonna set books, right, and then we're gonna grab the current books. We're gonna pass in a function which updates this instead, and then once we grab the current books, we are going to return a new array, and then we are going to copy all the current books, and then we append the new book. So we have updated our state here. So by doing this, we are going to add a new book. So now I'm going to export this as a default this context provider. So what we need to know is we have to kind of provide this context at some level within our app. So the best place to do that is over here. So you'd have to, we want this context to sort of pass data to all of our pages, right? So it's either we could wrap our outlet, which contains all of our routes, to so that this data is propagated throughout the whole of these routes, or we could provide it at the main level here to wrap our app with the context. Usually I like to do it here. I'll just remove this. So in here I'll just import the context provider over here, and then I'll just wrap my app component inside the context provider like so. This is how I would do it. So by doing so, we have added the context to the whole of our app. So to test this, I'm going to come over to my home page, which is over my home page, sorry, pages, yeah, over here. So I'm going to create a simple form that takes in that enables us to add a new book. So I've set up a new page, which is add book, which contains all the inputs. And then I've also made a little change here. I had forgotten to pass in the props here between the context providers, right? You provide the value as well as the props, which are going to be the app, right? That we're going to pass in here. It's the props. So the next thing that we are going to do is to try and add a new book over here. This is the interface, right? You have the books page, which way you're going to display all your books. You could just click on this icon to probably be able to access the page where you add your book. So these are just input where you just put in the values, the title, description, pages, etc. Right, so let's go ahead and do that. So now that everything is set up, I have created like this end or submit function, which takes in an event of type form event, right, which is going to help us extract the values from our inputs. So basically what I'm going to do here is get access to our context. So here I'm gonna say const, and then I'm gonna use object destructuring, and then I'm gonna use the React code use context, and then with use context I'm gonna pass in our context for the app, right? So I'm gonna import context from context app context, and then I'm gonna pass that context in here. So you're going to import this context here and then pass it over here, right? Then from there we are going to destructure the add book function, because that's what we need here to pass these values that we have obtained from our input. So we're just gonna call it over here and just pass in the values in this order specified. I'm gonna start with the title, right? We're also going to go with the description. We're also going to go with pages and then the author. But the type of these values, if you take a look at them, they are form data entry values. So you might have to put them to string, so that they accepted as strings. So I'm going to copy this and paste it for the other values. But this one right there, it requires a number, so let me show you how to solve that. The way you can do that is to just add a plus here so that it becomes a number. You convert it to string first and then convert it to a number. And the way you can do it in JavaScript in simple terms is just adding a plus sign at the front. So by doing this, we have kind of added our book, right? So to make it easy, we could come over to our context here where we are adding, or rather, we could just come over to our so right here, maybe we could just say use effect. Just call the use effect function. Is what I'll do. Use effect hook, sorry, not function. And this will depend on. So what I'm gonna do is call out the books or array which contains all our books. So here I'm just gonna log books, right? That value of books, and then I want that to be the dependency for this hook, so that whenever we make changes to the books, we log the books. We call this use effect. So the first thing to do here is to come over here, right? So by default, we are going to have something. See, it has created a new book. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't want to do that, to say to add a book which doesn't have these properties. You would have to kind of set the validation for that. But let's add something. You can tell that our books array, or our books array within our context, it's containing books now. So we could add maybe and then the author, let's just say someone, and if I hit save, you see now within our array, or within our context, we now have books array which contains 2 books, right? So our context is working as it stands. So we could use that same context to populate this page over here, this books page, right? So let me show you how that works. So I have set up a way to kind of display the books that we will have within our context. So the first thing that I did was to import the context and then pass it to the context hook, just like we did the last time in the add book here, to grab the values within the context. And then I created some state which will hold all our books, and then within the use effect hook, I want to say whenever we instantiate this component, we pass in the books to our state here, the books that are within our context, right? And this use effect will be dependent on the books. If books change, then we need to recall this use effect. And then you are going to use all the books, alright, this state variable, to populate our list of all books here, right? So just to show you how it looks. So before that, we're going to come back here. So I have added an extra line of code, which is I've imported this use history hook, and then I'm going to use the history to kind of say if we successfully add a book, we are going to check if the history length is greater than 0. If so, we are just going to return back to the previous page, else we're just going to replace it with the home page. Right, we no longer need this. And then these books as well. I think everything else is okay. So if I come back to my app over here, then I add something. So I do have these books over here. So I'll just copy these, copy this, right, and then probably this as well. And then I'm going to add these to our new book here. So I'm going to add the first book. So I'm on Windows. I'm going to hit Windows V to get the clipboard. So I'm going to start off with the author, since it's the last thing that I copied, right? The pages are these, and then the description is this one, and then the title is 1984. Then I'm going to hit save. So you see it has redirected us to the books page. Then we have also got to add another one, which is the Great Gatsby. The description for the Great Gatsby is this one. Then the number of pages for that one is 180. The author, it's F Scott Fitzgerald. And then I'll add it. Now it's added second book. So this is how you persist your data within your app using context API. So thank you guys.